Okay, fantastic. Once again, welcome to the virtual Agile meetup. It's really great to see, like I say, returning faces and new faces with us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are in the world. You are very welcome. So thank you for joining. Um, Today we have got Lisa Crisping with us, which is all very exciting because she's going to be talking about a holistic approach to testing in an agile context. So hopefully you're all here for that. If you're here to go to the other meetup, which is about washing your squirrel or something like that, then stick along. I think they're recording that one. Catch it later on YouTube, but hopefully we're good. Um, if you are, we welcome everybody here. So if you love Agile and you love testing, great. If you hate it, great. Stay here. We want to hear some of those arguments, some of those thoughts on why things are maybe not so good. So thank you again for joining us today. I'm Helen Garcia. I am an Agile coach and Scrum Master, and my co-host Ines Garcia. If you do a wave there as well. So thank you. We've been running this meetup, I think, since 2020. So that's exciting. Right. A little bit of kind of, I guess, health and safety. Fire exits are wherever they are in your home. For me, as you can see, it's this door here. If you have a fire, don't worry, just leave, get out. I'd just say that first of all. Second things are the chat. This was actually not for fire. It just triggered me. That was for the chat. We love to use the chat in this session. So if you've got a question, do feel free to either, you can put your hand up because actually we have to unmute you. Or if you can unmute, then excellent. Then just go out and ask your question. That's fine. You can put it in the chat as it says here. If you have got something interesting to share, an article, I don't know, a video, something that you think everybody else will benefit, then whack it in the chat as well. We like to hear and see these things. So that would be great. What else? You know that we're recording. We record because it's important for us to be able to share this knowledge, have these sessions, and give some freebies out there. At the end of the day, we have these amazing speakers that come and give us their time, and we want to be able to share that with others and any knowledge and questions that you have as well. The time box for this session, well, for me, it is 6 minutes past the hour, and we finish on the hour again. So I'll try and do this in my head. I think it's 54 minutes. I tend to get that wrong. But like I say, we will be finishing bang on time. What else have we got? Yes. So if you have been to the Virtual Agile Meetup before, we like to play a little game to warm us up. Got to warm your fingers up. I don't know why. I always say this and then regret it afterwards, but essentially get our brains thinking, our hands thinking, and answering a few questions. So, does everybody know the game rock, paper, scissors? I got a thumbs up. Yeah, cool. So you all failed at that. It was either a rock or a scissor. But that's okay. We'll have another go. So show me your best rocks. Beautiful, amazing. Paper. Cool. Yeah, beautiful, lovely. That's great. And scissors, depending on what kind of day you had, just be careful about the scissor sign. Lovely, beautiful. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask you 3 questions. And in response to those questions, you're going to show me a rock, a paper, or a scissor. Usually this goes okay, but sometimes my questions are not a yes, maybe, or no, and it's all very confusing. But you know what? I'm not the star of the show, so I'll hopefully get away with it. The first question is this. Is preventing issues early on more satisfying than finding bugs in prod? Quite a few rocks out there. Put it in the chat as well if you want to put it in the chat. So okay, cool. We're more satisfied by finding issues early. Woo-hoo. Okay, second question is quality should be baked into every step of development over a second thought of being like, oh, we'll just create another Jira ticket. Love a bit of Jira, but we also love quality. Excellent. Cool. Okay. The third question is testing activities should be a constant companion, showing up at every stage of development, much like a reliable sidekick. Okay, great. Lots of rocks there. Amazing. Okay, thanks. That's all your warm up. Hopefully your hands are feeling lovely and warm. You can now get ready for writing all those questions down for Lisa during the session. I always like to throw in a little bit of a quote here. So before I head on, I'm going to hand over to my wonderful co-host, Ines.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I saw this the other day and actually so very love it. I used to tend to say account for what's important, not just for what you can count, but also you're explaining the ripple effects of doing so or not doing so. Um, and yeah, so next one up, Helen. Basically, I'm gonna say this very quickly. So happy to have Lisa Christine with us at last, been so long time coming. And crazy to think that we haven't covered quality assurance yet in these sessions over the last 4 years. So if for some reason you haven't come across Lisa yet, well, I like to explain that she has been championing the testing in the Agile since, well, 90s. So you're really up for a treat today. So without further ado, please, Lisa, take it away. Thank you ever so much to share your wisdom with us.
Well, thank you. I think Helen kind of already did my talk for me. That's a very simple way to get the message across.
Yeah.
I almost feel like I don't need to make a presentation, but let me share my screen. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes,
Okay,
that's
and I
completely.
can no longer see the Zoom chat because that would be too confusing for me. So if anybody, I was telling Helen is, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm quite honored to be able to join this group and share some thoughts about testing and quality. And I like to do I mostly do workshops when I go to conferences. Talks are not my strength really, but I like to make this as interactive as we can. So if you have questions, just feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat, especially if I use a term that's not familiar to you. I don't want people to remain confused throughout my talk because I said something I didn't define. So yeah, feel free to shout out questions. And I think there'll be plenty of time at the end for questions too. So a little bit about me. I live in Vermont on a little farm with donkeys, cats, a dog, and a husband, and a lot of wild animals. And Janet Gregory and I have worked together for, golly, almost 25 years now, writing books and creating courses and videos and all kinds of stuff to share not only what we've learned working on Agile teams over the years, but we know so many people now around the world and they share their experiences with us and we pass those on too. All of our books contain a lot of contributions from practitioners around the world, which is the most valuable part, really. But today, what I'd like to do is introduce you to the holistic testing model. And this is a brainchild of Janet. Janet Gregory, she's the idea person, and I just help her spread the word about them. And she thought of this a couple years ago, and we've had a lot of feedback from people that say their teams, it really resonates with them, and it really helps them confidently deliver high quality products in today's continuous world. So quality, what does that really mean? There's a word we ought to define. So I'm going to see if I can see the chat because I'd really like to see the chat, but I don't know how to make it come up when I'm sharing my screen. But share with each other. Here are 3 cups of coffee. One's just kind of a plain cup of coffee. One's a fancy foam top cappuccino. I guess I'm not a coffee drinker. And one's got a really cute design on top. What's the best quality coffee there in your opinion? And if you don't, if you feel like sharing that in the chat just to see what other people are thinking, go for it.
We've got one, and then we've got whichever one I asked for, which quite like that.
If you're not a coffee drinker, think about, I don't know, if you're a tea drinker or beer or wine, whatever. You like the plain one, you like the fancy one. And how do you know what's the criteria you use to think is the best? Some people really like it plain black coffee. Some people like the artwork. What about the quality of the coffee? Would that be important to you? Where did the beans come from? Were they sustainably sourced? What elevation were they grown at? Where were they roasted? When was it picked? There are a lot of things that could go into coffee. Now let's add another dimension like price. Now, which one do you think is the best? However you define the best. Do you consider value for the price? Did anybody change their mind when they saw the prices? So that's always nice to know too. But what about things like service or the environment where it's served? Would that affect your perception of what's best? So some people probably just want to grab a quick coffee, cheap coffee at the gas station because they're busy. Some people would like the ambiance of an upscale cafe and music playing and a lot of different considerations there. And what if you found out all three of the places used exactly the same roasted beans that all came from the same place? Would that change what you're willing to pay for the coffee? So software is just like this. We have so many different dimensions of quality, different aspects of quality, and we have to decide what's most important to our customers. So just stop for a minute, and if you feel like sharing this in the chat too, does your team really have conversations about what quality means to you and to your business and to your customers? What level of quality does your team want to achieve, or the teams that you're working with? Do you have specific quality goals? So some companies use Net Promoter Score, they're based on customer surveys. Some companies use service level objectives like, 5.9 availability or 0 defects escaping into production. Yes, it can be done. In my experience, when I've been on teams where we have this conversation, right? When we got together as a team, what is quality to us? What does it mean? What level of quality do we want? And can we commit to that? We're not going to achieve it right away, but are we going to work step by step toward that level of quality? And the teams I've been on where I couldn't get them to have that conversation, they were pretty good teams, but they weren't the high performing teams. The really high performing teams started out with that commitment to an agreed upon definition and level of quality. So, and of course, it has to meet the business goals as well. And unfortunately, not everybody really understands quality and why we should invest in it, but that's another presentation. So we have a couple of different kinds of software quality. So we have internal quality that includes things like automated regression testing that provides living documentation of how our system works, understandability that helps us make changes in our code faster, deliver things to our customers faster. External quality, that's more what's important to our customers, to our business. And context matters. So every organization is going to have different quality aspects that are important to them. Both the internal and external types of quality provide business value because internal quality lets the team make the business successful. And the external quality is obviously something the customers want. So, but they're both valuable. So it is really hard. Quality is hard to define, and testing is hard to define. It's huge. We know for sure though, we can't test quality in after the code is written. That just doesn't work. We might catch bugs, but we didn't add any quality. Janet and I, well, we put together a definition of agile testing a while back that we got community input on, and you can find that on our agiletester.ca blog. But this is what we think about testing, and we have to build the quality in, like we thought about in the rock, paper, scissors game. So testing's not a phase, or it shouldn't be, because we know that doesn't work very well. It's a set of activities, a huge range of activities. I mean, if Janet and I once tried to write a list of all the types of testing we could think of, and we got to 100 and said, okay, we're not going to go on. But the main thing to take away is that testing is an integral part of software development, right along with coding, along with design, along with architecture. There's so many things that are part of software development, and testing is just one of those things, not an add-on. So one aspect of the holistic approach that I'm going to talk about is that everybody on the delivery team and some people outside of your team are going to work together to produce the quality that you're looking for. It's not handing things over from one role to the next. So a fully cross-functional agile team, or however you want to call it, some people don't really like the word agile anymore because what does it really mean to us? But your team has agility. We may be the database experts, operations experts, performance testing experts. So I'm going to talk about how teams can use this holistic testing model to guide them in building quality in all the way around that software development lifecycle and coming up with a really effective testing strategy. So people talk about shift left and shift right. And when the people started first talking about that, I don't know if you've heard those terms of testing, shift left, shift right. Like, what does that mean? Because software development is not linear. It's a loop. But we can certainly think of the left side of the loop and the right side of the loop. And so this is Janet's version of the infinite loop of software development. So we can think of new changes that the business wants us to deliver, starting with a discovery and going through these different stages around the loop. With this model, there's no set time, there's no set gates between these stages. There are some pauses where we want to stop and reflect. Are we ready to move on to the next thing? Or maybe we need to circle back to an earlier stage because, oh, we missed a requirement. We didn't think about this risk. We need to go back and address it. But the model helps the team stay on track and just make sure that we plan and execute all the testing activities that we need at each stage. So why the term holistic? Dan Ashby, gosh, it's been 8 years ago now. He did a blog post that he called continuous testing, and he had a loop like the DevOps loop. And he added, we test here, 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 all the way around the loop, because we do. And he called that continuous testing. That was in 2016. And since then, people have started to use continuous testing to mean the automated regression tests that run in our continuous integration. Okay, so we can use continuous testing. But holistic reflects the idea that it's the whole team taking responsibility for this, not just putting it off on testers or quality assurance people, and that it's the whole life cycle as well. If you search online for the DevOps loop, you'll see it has a test phase in it. I think that they meant those continuous tests that run in CI, the automated regression tests, I'm assuming, or maybe the unit level tests, but it gives the wrong impression. And it's kind of what inspired Janet, along with Dan Ashby's model, to come up with this. Testing really does happen throughout the life cycle. So there's the model with some example testing activities at each stage. There are no rules. There's no hard and fast what you should do at each stage. These are just some examples to help people understand the model. But your team may do different activities, or you may do activities in a different place. This is just a thinking tool. And what we hope people will do is use it to have good conversations as they start to work on, the small little chunks of value that we're going to get out to our customer. So I'll go into more detail if I could get my mouse to work. So in the discovery, the business folks are saying, hey, we've got an idea. I wonder if it has value. So they might do some user research and things like that. And we can test those ideas. We can ask questions about them. And is this congruent with the rest of our product? Is this congruent with what the business is trying to do? What problems are we solving? And we move into these planning stage to think about risks, to make sure we're not making maybe the business stakeholders made some assumptions that the delivery team doesn't know about, things like that. And we really encourage people to use collaborative visual tools to help with that, whether it's story mapping, event storming, risk storming, impact mapping, all of these things, mind mapping, all of these things help us think outside the box, get out of our rut, and really expand our minds about what is this change going to do for our product and for our customers. So this is where testers often add the most value. When I work with teams that don't have any testers, or they don't have anybody who that's their deep skill is testing, I find that nobody asks those questions. Anybody could ask those questions. I don't know why people in other roles don't always think of the what if questions, or what's the worst thing that could happen questions. And so they may do a great job with their software development practices, but because they didn't question the requirements, because they didn't look at the risks, they deliver something to production and then they're really surprised they get a bunch of production issues because they didn't deliver what the customer wanted. So, if our product is coffee, we could go talk to the customers. Like, do you just want a cheap, quick cup of coffee, or you want a really pretty cappuccino in a nice cafe? Sorry about the noise. I said this was a construction zone. So now we're getting into the understanding part, and this is where the team builds shared understanding. We're all on the same page with our business stakeholders. What do we need to create? What are we going to deliver? And this is where practices like behavior-driven development, if you're familiar with that, using business-facing tests to guide software development. And using techniques like example mapping at the story level so that we understand the business rules and we have concrete examples that illustrate those business rules and how the feature should behave or how the story functionality should behave. So we definitely want to involve our domain experts, programmers, maybe even our operations people, platform engineers, site reliability engineers, to determine what kind of telemetry do we need to add to the code to make sure we can take care of this feature when it's in production and understand how customers are using it. So obviously there's not a lot of room to put everything in here, but you can think about test data, lots of different things. And these are all testing activities. We haven't written a single line of code, but we've done a whole lot of testing. And when you're having these conversations in a room and you ask a question and somebody goes, "Oh, you just prevented a bug." And that's what our goal is. Now we're actually writing some code. So hopefully we're using some good practices like test-driven development, using tools like static code analysis to help make sure our code is clean and maintainable. Collaborating together. A lot of teams that are new to being a cross-functional team, often the testers who maybe came from a more phased and gated type environment, they might not be comfortable sitting down together with people writing the code to collaborate and work on the defect prevention. And one thing that we find is a good introduction to that is something Janet calls show me. Some people call it desk checking. So asking the developer or the developer pair or the ensemble working on a story, hey, when you think you're about ready to commit those changes, could we spend about 10 minutes together and you can just show me the code and the tests you've written, and maybe we can do a little manual exploration of how that works. And it's just a small time box, but 9 times out of 10, you identify either a bug or the two of you have a different idea of how it should work. So now you need to go talk to the product owner or somebody to get more information. So these little activities as we're building the code, again, they really help prevent bugs and save us time later. We're not going to go into automation. I'm not going to go into automation here, but there's a lot of ways like test automation pyramid to help you build a good automated test strategy.
Just before, sorry, Lisa, can I ask a quick question?
Oh, good.
So the question's coming to the chat, and I'm not sure if you've sort of covered this bit just in the time before this, but a question around we can't test quality in after the code is written. So you talked about sort of test-driven development and sitting together there. Can you dig into a little bit more detail on that to give a bit more depth?
About test-driven development?
About testing, you not building, that you can't test quality in after the code is written, that it's before. It's just to clarify, it's not, you're not testing code before it's actually built, but it's
testing code before it's written. Yeah, so we are doing what I consider to be testing activities. We're having structured conversations using a framework like story mapping or example mapping to make sure we understand, at the feature level, how this should behave. And then at the individual story level, what's the goal of the story? What are the business rules for each business rule? Give me an example of happy path behavior. Give me an example of not happy path behavior. And having those discussions really fleshes the story out for everybody, because a lot of times the teams I've been on, we all talk about the story in our iteration planning meeting, and we all think we know what it is, just based on what's written in our online project tracking tool. And we deliver it to the product owner. We've done a really great job with it. We think we've got automated tests and we've done a lot of exploratory testing, and we're very happy with it. And the product owner's like, that is not what I wanted. And so we're trying to prevent rework and waste by making sure we have that shared understanding that we're all seeing the same thing before we start building the code. And we can take those concrete examples and turn them right into, scenarios that become executable tests. So and then those tests are living documentation because they're written in a way that, a lot of people use a Gherkin format, given some precondition. When the user does this, then this other thing should happen. They're just valuable in so many ways. Does that help? I hope it does. You still do need to test after the code is written, but you'll have less to do because you'll have already prevented a bunch of problems.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Lisa.
Okay, well, let's move over to the right side of that loop. We've written some code. We've deployed it to a development environment, to a test environment. And this is where we've got environments where we can run our automated regression tests. And there are a lot of human-centric testing activities we could do here. So as we get enough stories for a feature or epic written and completed, now we can start doing exploratory testing on that feature. In other words, we knew what the requirements were, but I've never met a customer, including myself, who really knows what they want until they start using the product or using the feature. And so now we're going to use that feature and start discovering things about it that we didn't think about on the left side because we can't think of everything. And this is also where we get a chance to test a lot of quality attributes that are so important and maybe more important than functionality, like performance, security, accessibility, stability, recovery. There's lots and lots of quality aspects that you need a bigger environment than an individual development environment to test. And we separated deployment out into its own stage because this is where the strong deployment pipeline really shows its value for the team. It's really, if you're trying to aim for continuous delivery of getting small increments of new changes to customers frequently, you really have to have a really strong, reliable deployment pipeline with good automated test suites and automated deployments and all the things. If you're familiar with the DORA State of DevOps survey and report, which 2024 just came out, I highly recommend taking a look. They use a metric called lead time, and it's from the time you commit code to the code base and do a change or a merge request or a pull request to when that change is available for customers. Because those of you who do work with teams and get involved in this process, reviewing the code that can be a real bottleneck for some teams. Like it can take days for that merge request to be approved. So we want to measure the effectiveness of this deployment pipeline and help teams identify bottlenecks. And as we get into release, these days, teams can choose a release strategy that lets them deploy these small changes to production without exposing them to the customer. So they can use release feature flags or toggles, blue-green deploys where you have two mirror image or two identical systems, but only one is available to the customer. You can deploy to the idle one, do some testing, and then switch them over. Canary releases where you just do, let's release to a small number of customers and watch our monitoring, see what happens. There are lots of other strategies to hide those changes until we can safely test in production with our modern technology in a lot of domains. And so we can really feel confident before we let all of our customers see those. So that fast deployment pipeline and then the ability to roll changes back quickly if you do see some problems, that's really important. And now our features are in production, we're using them, our customers are using them. And this is where all the telemetry I talked about helps us, because now we can see how customers are using our features. And our customer may be another system somewhere, but we still have log data that we can put on a monitor or use observability tools to understand what's happening. And, can we detect errors faster? Maybe we can detect the errors before the customers detect them and fix them before they even feel any pain. If something unexpected does happen, despite all of our testing on the left side and despite exploratory testing and really trying to think outside the box about risks and things, there's still going to be the unknown unknowns. Do we have the data when we have an unexpected problem to analyze that problem and know how to fix it without having to add more instrumentation to the code and redeploying to production? I've felt that pain many times. And then all this information that we get, that drives our future changes, and we can create hypotheses. Oh, we can see that users struggle with this new change to our user interface that we made on this one page. And sorry, I'm very web app centric because that's mostly what I've worked on the last few years. So we made this change, and we see customers are maybe struggling to finish out that activity because they don't understand what to do. So we might have a hypothesis. Oh, if we put the button over here, maybe they'll discover it better, and that'll result in more people making a purchase or subscribing or whatever it is. So we can add new changes. The business can think of new changes, and we can have a hypothesis to know if it worked. So we've gone around the whole loop. So I'm assuming that people here are in a lot of different specialties on their teams. So no matter what is your role or your specialty, what stages do you get involved in when you work with software teams, or if you're on a software team? And what testing activities do you get involved with? So think about that for a minute. And what's important here, I found, is building relationships. So back when I was working full time, which I did for 40 years, working, that's my favorite thing. Work as part of a team and build awesome products for awesome customers. But whenever I joined a new company, I would immediately let me get to know people on the platform engineering team. Let me get to know people on the database team, all these supporting teams that we had beyond the feature team, because then I could get involved. Oh, I can as a tester, I can be a virtual member of the monitoring and observability team and really help design what data do we need to collect, how should we show it, what alerts might we need. So I could get involved in that, but because it's not my area of expertise, I needed to make friends with the people who know about it, and so that I can collaborate with them. So think about the relationships you could make wherever you're working to get involved in the stages where you're not involved now, because testers can certainly add value at every stage. And I think everybody on the team can. This is a whole team responsibility. So the product owner, you're probably already using analytics to help understand customer behavior. Well, the observability tools might also help you get insights into that. So maybe somebody on the platform team can help you understand that, how to use the tools. Everybody can help with designing experiments, coming up with hypotheses. So The testing and production and observability are super important because we know that we can't, our test environments never look like production. And so we need to be able to understand production too, if it's possible. This is a graph that Isabel Evans showed at a conference a while back. And she was working with 2 different companies, and they had basically the same product, the same functional features, but different customer bases. So one had customers that didn't care about speed. They were really scared of making mistakes. They were not very tech savvy. The other had customers who really valued being able to complete their tasks quickly, and they wanted a lot of flexibility in their app. So there wasn't a price point difference, but a quality attribute difference. And though they were, in a sense, competitors, they were dealing with completely different customer bases. So they're both providing value to customers, but it's really different value because they have different people. So, you have to know where your product stands. So if you're a utility that no matter what you do, people can't really change, then it doesn't really matter. But if you have a lot of competition, you have to think about it. I'm just going to briefly mention it's really helpful to know where you are right now in your quality practices for your team and decide where you want to be. You don't have to be great at everything. It's whatever is important in your context. And so knowing where you are in each quality aspect and where you'd like to be helps you to focus your improvement efforts. I want to improve our feedback loops. Or, we really don't have a good quality culture here. What can we do about that? Be a lot of different things. And I would recommend these books by Janet Dreary and Selena DeLisi. It's a great way to do an assessment on your team and see where you stand and kind of help create a roadmap for your quality journey. So I will share these slides so that if people want these links. So in short, when you focus on speed, you just accumulate a bunch of crap, a bunch of technical debt. It slows you down, and you just go slower and slower. When you focus on quality, when the team is able to have time to learn good core development practices, you build that solid foundation. You build a good, maintainable, operable, testable code base so that you can adapt to the changes that the business wants quickly and pivot whenever you need to. Talk about quality. Ask the good questions. What's the value of this feature? How will we test this new change? What quality attributes are most important for this? How will we know when we succeeded? When we put this in production, how will we know that we satisfied the customers? So to achieve our quality goals, we need to experiment. We need to innovate. Of course, it has to be okay to fail. So we need that psychological safety. And each person needs to feel they're valued and they can feel empowered to help. So when we use our strengths to help each other, we have a better chance of succeeding. So shift the focus to thinking about testing first. Bug prevention over bug detection. We still want to detect them if we miss them, but try to prevent them. Think about our product at a system level. What does the customer see? Because they see the big picture and we're focused on these little tiny user stories. And again, business stakeholders can help with that. So have that quality conversation with your team. Think about testing holistically and get everybody engaged in it. So I wanted to share, because this is a virtual Agile meetup, some of the things that I've found helpful on remote teams. And I love that we played that rock, paper, scissors game. I think little games like that, client I'm working with this week, one of the teams does a New York Times Connections game at the end of their stand-up. And it just takes a few minutes and they have a lot of fun with it. But these are just some things that have worked for me. I have usually worked where we're doing pairing or working in an ensemble, mob programming or teaming as they call it now. But when we do that, we have people can find us. We have a channel on Zoom, or I'm sure you could do it on Teams or whatever. So if people want to find us and join our ensemble to ask us a question or help us with whatever story we're working on, they can. Having a test party as a tester, it's like, how do I get people interested in testing? oh, well, we've got a new feature we're working on. We think it's almost ready to go. Put out the call and say, hey, we're going to have a test party. We'd love for people to join us for just 30 minutes and see what we can learn about this product. And you're always going to find bugs and people go, ooh, that was a really good thing to do. So then they start getting more interested in testing. And then I see so many teams having retrospectives or planning meetings, and they're not using like virtual sticky notes or anything to draw. They're just talking and maybe typing into a Google document. I think the most effective communication that's been found scientifically is two people on a whiteboard. You need to be able to use your hands. So we have a book on our Agile Testing Fellow website that's free, but Janet and I we've just added and updated to it, and it'll be available on LeanPub soon. So in a bigger and better edition. And again, I'll share these slides so you have these links. And we were so lucky to have a total eclipse here in Charlotte, Vermont last April, and the donkeys helped us out by eating our paper napkins mostly. So there you go. I'd love to hear your questions. I'm trying to stop sharing, but there we go.
Well, I mean, firstly, a test party, that sounds epic and a lot of fun. Yeah, I just love that idea. Sorry, I just wanted to say it was just absolutely brilliant. It's the first time I've ever heard of a test party, so I'm going to try and bring that home.
I got that. I got that from somebody I worked with a couple years ago, and of course, it's easier to do in person because you can really make it a party. I haven't figured out how to do food remotely yet, but sometimes you can just send little treats to people or play, like I say, play a game or something that's fun too.
Yeah, exactly. A little surprise treat in the mail. Great. So the floor is open for questions. I've got a few stacked up from the pre-questions that people had brought forward, but you guys made the effort, you turned up. Yeah, go for it. If you're struggling to unmute, just put your hand up and then I can unmute you. So we have got our first question in here. So how do you encourage an organizational shift in thinking somewhere that's, sorry, I'll reread that. That was terribly. How do you encourage an organizational shift in thinking somewhere that silos and QA after dev that has been dominant for years?
Well, I guess it depends on who you are. As a tester, I've worked on waterfall teams when that was popular, and I basically just got myself invited or elbowed my way into, remember the analysis meetings? Y'all probably aren't old enough. Requirement meetings, all those different phases, and I could test the requirement documents. I could look at them and say, hey, these two requirements are sort of mutually exclusive, or this isn't clear. And so I was able to collaborate with the whole team, but not everybody has that privilege. Sometimes the teams are told not to talk to each other or don't talk to those business people and waste their time. It is hard. The people we have to persuade is the leadership, right? The executives have to. Everybody will say, "Oh, yes, we care about quality," because it's like mom and apple pie. Who doesn't love quality? But what does it really mean? It means you need to make an investment. It means you're going to need to slow down for a minute so that you can do better later on. And that's a big challenge that I've been thinking about for years. I would recommend a book called Leading Quality by Ronald Cummings John and Awais Peer. And they did a startup years ago that failed spectacularly because the quality was so bad. And they were like, quality? Huh? What's that? And so they learned all about testing and wrote this book because it's aimed at helping the executives learn in their business language why this is important. If you can get them to read a book, that might help. It is hard. I don't have a great answer, but find an ally that thinks like you do and brainstorm with that person, and then think who else you can find, more allies that can come up with a plan for your situation. and knowing that you'll always have haters that'll never go along with you. Influencing is hard. I do like another book I recommend for people trying to be influencers is Linda Rising and Marilyn Mann's Fearless Change and More Fearless Change. They're nice patterns that you can use to try to provoke change, and they're great. They've been lifesavers for me.
Brilliant.
Oh, thank you for putting the link in. Yeah.
Yeah, both very actionable as well. So, and good ones to refer back in time, I find. There are some questions in terms of like resistance. So, you were just saying who doesn't like pie or whatever. Of course, everybody wants a good quality of the products, but when you get to the details of perhaps getting things done quicker, speed over quality, or do you get resistance from other team members because that's not their job? What about resistance?
I mean, it's hard. I think that most resistance comes from up above because our corporate, I don't know about where y'all live, but in North America, our corporate environment, our economy is such that, it's all about the company's valuation. It's all about short-term things. And so it's like, get this feature out because we got a $2 million sale resting on it. Like, well, what about our existing customers? We need to fix these problems that they're having. And that's just really tough. I mean, I don't have a good answer because it's really frustrating and hard. But we can't give up. We have to try to do the little things. I think one thing that's worked really well for me, and it's something I got from Linda Rising, is small, frugal experiments. So if your team's having a problem, there's some obstacle in the way of your quality goal, design some small, like something that you think, oh, I think if we tried example mapping, that we would cut our rejection rate from the product owner by half. And then our cycle time would be 10% faster within like 2 weeks. It would be so effective. Well, let's try it and see if that's true. So you don't have to get permission to do that. You're just going to do something different at your iteration planning meeting. You're going to use a framework. Nobody up above you has to know you did that. If it fails, well, you didn't really spend much time, or you didn't spend any money and not much time to try it. So it's, there's kind of a stealth approach to trying to improve in small, tiny increments and see what you can do.
Yeah, and having the data to be able to back it up, right? So, it was like this, but now it's like this. Isn't
exactly.
that cool? Did
that
it work?
does help. Yeah. I like what Christian said about learning about the domain. It's too bad that didn't go with your subject matter experts. But as a tester, my favorite thing was always been learning the business domain. And it's so important because here's the thing. Here's how you go faster. In fact, I've worked on a team where we actually spent story points each sprint to sit with the business people and understand their jobs better, because when things came through the product owner, the poor product owner is like, well, they're not an accountant. They don't really know what the accountant needs. And you're playing that telephone game. So we spent time, I sat with the accountant, somebody sat with the marketing person, just different people. And once we had the business domain nailed down in our minds, they'd come to us with, oh, we want this fancy new feature. And we'd look at it and say, well, it's like, there's 20% of this that we can tell is just gilding the lily. And it's like, okay, if you want the whole thing, it's going to cost you this much, but we can do 80% of it. It only costs you this. It'll cost you half of that. What do you think? Oh, they're always happy to cut that. So by cutting scope, we look like we're going really fast because we're delivering what they want, but not all the extra bells and whistles.
Mm.
And that builds trust, so you get more freedom to do what you want.
Great. So I have a little bit of a curveball question on this. So how do you shift an engineer's mindset to include testing as part of their sort of initial kind of estimation and complexity during, when you're refining things, when you're going back to kind of that initial stage of building requirements? Because that seems to be quite a common thing that's sort of missed out.
Well, the most effective way that I've experienced is when the development managers realize testing is important. And so they start adding testing skills to the skills matrix that the developers need in order to advance up their career ladders. So if they have exploratory testing skills needed to advance to their next level, they're going to be happy to learn about exploratory testing. And then, so that helps a lot, because if they're being paid to write code, they're going to write code. If they feel like they're not being paid for testing, and they might even be penalized for it. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, just like I say, these sneaky little things of, like I told the show me. Oh, show me the code you just wrote. Oh, did you write any unit tests? What do those look like? Well, let's try this out locally and let me see what it looks like. And when I do that with a developer and we find a problem right away, they're like, wow, that was great. And then, at the stand up the next day, they might say, hey, Lisa, help me look at this and look what we found. Or another way, there's a friend of mine, I'm just going to put her website in the chat. She has a really good post about how she went to a new company where everybody's working solo. There was no collaboration going on at all. And she had these little hacks of, oh, can you come and help me? I think I found a security problem. And can you come and help a look at me? And just kind of tricking people into like, can you just come for 20 minutes? And they would find they enjoyed it. Like, oh, it's nice to collaborate with somebody, and look what we learned in just 20 minutes together. And so if you can get people to just spend a little bit of time with you and they start to see the value, then, and have the test parties, nobody wants the bugs to go in production. Nobody wants to have to deal with a bunch of production tickets instead of writing new features. And so when they see that you spend 30 minutes as a group testing something before you think is ready to go, and you find a bunch of bugs, they're like, wow, that was a good thing to do. Let's keep doing that. And other people on other teams say, hey, I want to join the next session. Can you do that? As when I worked as a tester, and like one place I worked recently, there were 12 of us testers and 40 software teams. So we could be on 2 or 3 teams and try to support them, but we couldn't support all of them. And so we started having these test parties and say, hey, people on other teams, if you want to come. And they'd say, oh, could you do one of those for our team? And so it's just started spreading around the teams of, hey, this testing is a good thing.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love it. Well, we've got just a couple of minutes left, and I know that we love to get feedback on these sessions. We love to know what you want to hear more of, what you want to hear less of, what you want to hear about, just overall. And Ines and I are always super keen to be able to try and get people just like Lisa to come and talk about testing and quality and how to just make life at work a little bit better, a little bit easier. So as Ines rushes to put that feedback session together, then she's going to drop it in the chat. Sorry, but we probably have time maybe for one more question. Anybody got one more burning question before we close?
I haven't got a question as such, Helen. I've got an maybe I don't know. Will you judge if I'll try and eke a question out of it. Just one of the things I wanted to say was actually I guess when I saw the session on holistic testing, I did imagine something like some of the things you presented, but actually the best thing or the best challenge for me was actually holistic being everyone. So not just at every stage of development, but so even to the extent where I'm thinking developers, testers, UX specialists, but actually no, it's everyone, stakeholders, everyone at stages before you've even really thought of the product almost, or it's still a tiny. So I think that was really useful. That was really valuable for me. So a valuable reminder. Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Janet and I have been preaching the whole team approach for a lot longer than we came up with the word holistic, but the holistic really captures it, we think.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you, John, for that observation and that kind of light bulb moment. That's really that's very cool reminder. And that pretty much takes us to the end. So please, I promise the feedback that we have in there, it takes about 2 minutes. It's really no longer than that. You've got 2 minutes left until your takeaways order or you crack open your beverage of whatever kind you want. So Lisa, you have just been fantastic. Thank you so much for giving up your time to share with us here at the Virtual Agile Meetup, and we really look forward to seeing you around, obviously, but also seeing everybody else when you come back next time for our November virtual Agile meetup. Thank you. And
Awesome. Thank you so much.
good morning, good evening, and good night.